Welcome to another episode of This Is Why I Don't Vote, a podcast. Season 3, Episode 21. Your safe space to discuss sports, politics, social issues, and even religion, where we will take it all very seriously, but not too seriously. Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg may very well fight in a mixed martial arts contest for our viewing pleasure. Seeing this, hearing about this, reading about this, it is like a repetitive kick to my scrotum. Thus, we will explore. ESPN has another round of layoffs, and there's more to come for sure. To wrap up, I was exposed to the cable television for the first time in close to 8 months, maybe longer. And I was appalled by the number of drug ads on the television screen. We, you and me, dear listener, are being conditioned to accept sickness as a normal part of life. And that is nonsense, dear listener. That is absolute and total nonsense. Thank you for listening. I do appreciate it. Please like, please subscribe, please 5 stars, please write a review, send to the peoples far and wide. This Is Why I Don't Vote podcast is on Patreon. If you like what you hear, please support.
Act 1. God, I hate social media. The Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg fight speculation.
I've been forthcoming with you, dear listener, that this isn't nearly as easy an endeavor that I thought it would be initially, and it's gotten more and more difficult as I tried to expand the reach of this podcast. Trying to do the things that the social media, the influencer generation makes look so easy. I know it's not easy, now having been in the thick of it. I know that a lot of these influencers making all these videos, it's a full-time job. Promoting all this stuff, full-time job. This is what they do for a living. Some of them very well, some of them enormously well. And there's a bunch of also-rans, like me, who are doing something. They're putting out content. But I don't think it's a secret anymore that just posting videos, 3 videos a day, 4 videos a day, that's not enough to make it in social media anymore. You see pretty girl A, you see pretty girl B. One pretty girl has 1 million followers, one pretty girl has 12,000. The people choose. So you've got to put yourself out there over and over and over again in the hopes of being chosen. And like any Hollywood actress will tell you, unless of course she grew up in Beverly Hills or Hollywood, I was big fish in small pond in Iowa, Alaska, Virginia, whatever place that she came from. And you could probably say that, of course, for all the male actors as well. And then you come to Hollywood and you are one of a handful of 10s that one could see in the Starbucks at 7:48 a.m. Lots and lots of people there. You don't stand out by your looks, and very often you might even be anonymous with your acting chops. It's just how you get chosen. Some people break, some people don't. Is there a formula to cracking the code? That's the point of this segment. It appears that there is a formula for cracking the code, and I have not yet found it. Or perhaps I have, and I just can't bring myself to go there. I did some traveling over the 4th of July. It wasn't an international trip, yet getting out of my house, getting away from business and getting in your head about numbers, all of that. Relaxing, taking it easy. Relaxing and taking it easy, well, you expose yourself to the social media again. You expose yourself to the news. You expose yourself, in my individual circumstance, to cable. Yes, dear listener, I watched cable. I watched the ESPN. Still littered with commercials. We'll get to that in the next segment. In yet another Twitter beef, and I don't even know that you could call it a Twitter beef because Mark Zuckerberg really doesn't use Twitter. He uses Facebook and Instagram. In a social media beef, which is, in my mind, I just shake my head. I just have so many issues with the medium in general. And here I am, yes, the irony, it just won't ever end. I'm talking to you about my dislike for social media on a podcast that I promote through social media. On these very platforms, an eruption of activity in Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk challenging one another to some sort of MMA style cage match. Where to begin on this? I am going to, as much as I can, stay out of judgment and focus this all on me and how it is a reflection of my failure to really embrace what is effective in the public sphere in the 21st century. I wrestle with this all the time, the extent to which I'm a narcissist. Why am I even doing this? Do I really have something that's that important to say, or that has such artistic expression, or shit, throw anything else in. Throw any other rationale as to why anyone is posting on social media in the first place, absent trying to keep family members up to date with a newborn baby. That's probably the only legitimate reason that's left for using social media. Hey, we've got a newborn. We're exhausted all the time. Don't call us. Don't text us. Here are baby photos. Leave us the fuck alone. Other than that, it's a pretty narcissistic enterprise, is it not, dear listener? I am trying to gravitate towards content that is less egocentric and more about finding different types of groups in your community, or getting referrals, or expanding your social and business networks. Sure, that takes up 5 to 10% of people's time on social media. The other 90% of the time is surrounding this energy of narcissism that people like Mark Zuckerberg and Elon Musk, they play to so well. For every social media post where someone is doing something stupid or saying something stupid or not realizing the extent to which other people see what they're saying or doing is stupid, how is that a barometer anymore? You have two billionaires with a B, coming out on what is the 21st century town square and saying, hey, let's get into a fight and televise it. For me, it just puts into light all of the problems that we purport to want solved, and have pioneers like the Elon Musks of the world and the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world to go out and solve them. To what extent do the Zuckerbergs and the Musks of the world want to go out and make the world a better place, solve the world's problems through innovative thinking and technology? And to what extent is it just all about their own ego and all about their own narcissism, seeing their face on TV, rubbing elbows with social and political tastemakers? And what does it say about us as a public that we are so vociferously through these same very mediums, where Musk and where Zuckerberg are challenging one another? What does it say about us that we want to participate in that feeding frenzy, that we want to be part of the high school gossip, that we would actually pay money to see the spectacle that was at its best, low-level, amateurish MMA fight? What's really coming through me, I'm just exhausted. This is exhausting. Does this not get old for anyone else? Is the next day that you go on Twitter, is it any better than the day before? Doesn't this shit-talking get old? Doesn't the quote-unquote beef get old? And I'm not judging you, dear listener, if you don't feel that way. What I'm realizing is I'm the odd person out. In feeling that way, I'm unique. Most people aren't getting bored with it. Most people aren't looking to get away from it. They're looking at things to do that no one else has done before. They're looking to be progressive within the medium. I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast. He had Andrew Dice Clay on, and I find Andrew Dice Clay to be a fascinating figure. He was the first arena comedian. He was the first comedian to be able to sell out 15, 20, 25, 30,000 seat arenas all over the country. And to do so, not only on one night, he could go into a city and do 2 shows. He could sell out Boston Garden. He could go to New York and sell out Madison Square Garden, which he did numerous times. And he could do that 2 nights in a row. He put out a comedy album the night the laughter died, and it didn't have all of the same paces that comedy albums had had up until that point for 30, 40 years. No one laughed. It was material that he was working on, and very often in rooms that had less than 10 people. And if it wasn't going well, he would get into heckle fights with individuals in the room, not quote unquote the crowd. There weren't enough people even to call it a crowd. And yet that album went platinum. And we're talking about the late 80s, early 90s into the mid 90s. It's not a new phenomenon that someone wants to do something different, that someone wants to take something that's been around for a long time and try to do something different, to be progressive, to be a pioneer. My reluctance is I don't know that we've ever had another time in human history where the forum for public discourse was also the most efficient medium for shit talking and for trivial, egoistic bullshit that had ever been created. We want our news and our information like we want our sarcasm and our judgment and our criticism and our high school gossip. Well, you can't shit where you eat and not expect there to be problems, dear listener. Perhaps I just need to work harder in creating that echo chamber that I want to have on social media and to start crafting a message that's more catered to, that's more sophisticated in the way I craft it to the echo chamber. And I have all those feelings and thoughts running through me. It's just so frustrating to see something as silly and trivial and stupid as two billionaires wanting to fight capture so much of the energy, the attention of the public that I'm competing for that same energy and attention, right? I do enjoy doing this. I do enjoy sifting through my thoughts, crafting them, sometimes trying to make it humorous, sometimes trying to make it serious. It is frustrating because the way we keep score shows I'm really close to last. Not a huge social media following, not a ton of downloads of each podcast episode. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Social media, in general, is a sadness factory. It really, whether we recognize it or not, it really helps shape the way we see the world because it's so difficult not to look through that lens and get into the mindset of comparison. I'm not comparing myself to Elon Musk or Mark Zuckerberg, except for in one very specific limited way. We're both creating content on social media, and things work and things don't work. And by way of that standard, they're successful and I'm not. I wrestle with whether or not I really want to be successful in this forum. I feel like it's a wet t-shirt contest and I'm going up there with a bunch of 23-year-old girls and half of them, halfway through the contest, start taking off their t-shirts. Everyone started screaming at me to take off my shirt and show my tits. Do I do it? Am I comfortable doing it? Even if I were comfortable and I'm willing to do it, what's the reception going to be like? Am I going to take it personally when I get booed for having small tits and, by the way, being the wrong gender? Part of me embraces that I'm never a successful contestant in a wet t-shirt contest. And yet the other part is saying, why do you keep going back and participating in the wet t-shirt contest then?
Act 2 It's not over for legacy entertainment companies. More cuts are coming.
There were a bunch of layoffs at ESPN, and I want to do a segment on where I believe television is headed after having watched ESPN as part of a vacation trip for the first time in close to 8 months. Let me be clear about that. I've watched ESPN, of course. When you have the ESPN app, you can watch much of the programming that's on the ESPN regular networks. I gave up my cable and was able to watch a lot of the programs that I wanted to watch, the actual sporting events, on the ESPN app. When you're watching regular ESPN and getting subjected to the litany of commercials and also what you would call their non-live sports programming, I guess that's what they call it. Really, it's just devolved into a bunch of talking heads speculating about nonsense. There's very little sports analytics anymore. There's very little breakdown outside of it being framed around a bunch of nonsensical hypotheticals and lists. My God, ESPN has become USA Today, just list after list after list. I have a friend who says people like lists. He likes to tease me by saying, hey, people like lists. He has a point. I'm not going to argue that point. People do like lists. In my mind, if I have to recall all of these different mediums that are using lists, the list is almost, at this point, the method of last resort to try to get your attention. This may be completely speculative. Well, hold on. It's not maybe. It is completely speculative. And I'm not even going to edit this part out. It's completely speculative. I think the lists are starting to go the way of the dodo. I'm not sure that people below the age of 40 really give a damn about lists. The top 5 of this, the top 10 of that. Why would I proffer as much? For the same reason that ESPN is hemorrhaging jobs. What they're doing, people aren't watching. They're just not watching. And it's the same thing with the parent company, Disney. What they're doing, people aren't watching. It doesn't matter if it's the sports content that, as I have opined, that's probably the best word for it because it is my opinion. It's just a bunch of talking heads. It's just a bunch of hypotheticals. It's just a bunch of nonsensical lists. It isn't compelling television. People aren't watching that. People are no longer glued to the movie screen, the television set, whatever the medium, to see the next Marvel movie. As much as it is an astonishment to me, Disney has run Star Wars into the ground such that a huge fan, like myself, does not care about the next Star Wars property that comes out whatsoever. That's the first loss. The Star Wars properties are so bad, they're not attracting newer, younger fans. That's the second loss. People that liked this content drove them away, alienated them. People that we want to attract to this content, not interested, will not support with money or attention. I'm not breaking new ground by saying this. ESPN in terms of a sports consumer and Disney in terms of a more aggregate or generalized entertainment consumer, whether that be the television, the movies, or even the properties, there are too many masters. They are trying to serve too many masters. This is not emphasized enough. The first master they're trying to serve is the almighty corporate shareholder. Let's put down for a little while woke ideology. Let's turn away from, the amount of money that Disney had to spend to get Star Wars, thus creating the need for an immediate return on those properties, and ESPN paying exorbitant amounts of money for NFL football in particular. Let's just take a quick step back and look at it from below instead of above, instead of assessing specific instances or circumstances where obviously they're going to need to turn around. Disney's going to need to turn around. ESPN's going to need to turn around a quick profit because they just expended a ton of money to acquire the likeness or the licensing or the property rights for some of these major marquee entertainment products that are on the market today. What about having to serve a corporate shareholder in general? The concept isn't new. There's always been this marriage between corporate money or institutional money and art. And as we all know, the lesson, which is timeless, is that art suffers when it is beholden to corporate money. What I feel is unique about this circumstance is I'm not sure there's ever been another time in human history where you had such a leveling of the playing field because of social media, and people can just go out and create the content that they want. And as I stated in the previous segment, it's pretty much all crowdsourced. If people choose it and like it and it gets that attention, The creator can instantly start reaping rewards, which are not only monetary profits, but also raising their profile, their likeness, on a medium which is ostensibly free. You're not having to pay anyone to promote your likeness. You're not having to share those profits with anyone because you're on YouTube or Instagram or on Twitter. So you have art that is suffering because it is now being whitewashed. That's probably, I didn't even mean to use that word because I think it takes on like a woke connotation. I'm not changing it. It is getting whitewashed. It's getting sanitized. That's the better word. Much of the artistic content, if you can even call it that, that's being produced by Disney, it's getting sanitized because it's got to go through so many different stakeholders, all with competing visions on what it's supposed to be. And the overarching stakeholder is we have to be certain that this is going to make money. What kind of artistic enterprise can you go into stating unequivocally, this is going to make money and this is how much money it's going to make? Has Disney demonstrated itself to be good at that over the course of the last 10 years? Have any of these corporations proven themselves to be good at that? The product now is bad. The content is bad. People aren't watching. Because there are fewer and fewer eyeballs on the content, the amount of money that is being demanded to advertise, to be an advertising partner, it's ridiculous. It's not warranted. We've gone through this exercise before, dear listener. What if you're the advertiser and you are advertising with ESPN on an NFL broadcast or any other live sport? What if you're an advertiser that is part of the advertising package that you bought in order to advertise for an NFL game or an NBA game? You had to buy advertising for some of their ancillary products, their other television shows, and people simply aren't watching them. You're going to demand more and more of your ads be played during those programs, and you're going to demand that more and more ads be played during the premier content, during the NFL game, during the NBA game. Well, what does that do? It increases the length of the overall game, and fewer people are willing to sit down and watch 3.5, 4-hour broadcasts. That's a rotten foundation. It doesn't matter about any of this wokeness. If you want me to do a 30-second on wokeness, no, it doesn't help when you have anyone from a sports entertainment standpoint or a movie television show standpoint trying to inject ideology, no matter what that ideology is. Trying to interject ideology in what amounts to escapism. People want to watch sports to escape. People want to watch movies and television to escape. That there's so much guilt in Hollywood in particular, but with many of these corporations for what they did in the past to ignore some of the problems that were ever present in society and to exploit them. Is that to be borne by the viewing population today? The penance? Should we be wearing the scarlet letter for the sins of Disney from the 1950s and 60s, or from any Hollywood studio of the same era? Whether any executive believes that to be the case, they don't get to unilaterally make that decision because we get to vote with our dollars. We get to vote with our attention. Television, movies, and now sports, they're going to have to get away from the we have to make some sort of quarterly profit in order to justify our existence to the shareholders and thus keep our jobs for another quarter. That's not going to work anymore, to the extent that it ever did. It reminds me, what's coming through right now is all of the banks that saw the housing crisis on the horizon in 2006 and 2007. This whole notion that no one saw this coming was nonsense. There's plenty of information out there now that demonstrates many people saw this coming. The biggest problem was they didn't know how to get out of that downward spiral. The way that they were doing it ensured that people were going to get paid, and they were going to get paid in the short term, and that the numbers for the stock price, for a prospectus, for a stock price in the future. All of those numbers looked good. They all added up properly. It's like being the captain of the Titanic and seeing the iceberg well in advance and saying, yeah, but it's still the fastest route. Let's not deviate. It's still the fastest route. I'm not going to shed a tear if ESPN morphs into a completely different type of entity, and if Disney does so as well. There's a lot of money out there, ladies and gentlemen. There is a lot of money. A lot of corporate money buying up properties all over the country, looking for a place to land. There's a lot of money looking for a place to land. So if something happens to ESPN, there will be live broadcasts of these sporting events, even if it's the leagues that start broadcasting their own events. I'm not worried about being able to see live sports. As far as Disney goes, meh. Until these corporations start looking more at the art and what the content is that they're producing and whether or not the people like it versus what is the bottom line on a quarterly earnings report and whether or not that met with projections, we're just going to see more and more layoffs. Is that necessarily a bad thing?
Act 3. We are being conditioned to accept sickness as a normal part of life.
I've been away from your regular cable TV for, again, maybe 8 full months. And it was appalling the number of drug ads that I saw over the course of a 72-hour period. There is a concerted effort, and I don't believe that it is a conspiracy. I don't believe in conspiracies. It is a concerted effort, though, by these drug companies to normalize sickness. The ads remind me of the part of Fight Club, where as a viewer, you are first properly introduced to Tyler Durden on an airplane.
If you are seated in an emergency exit row, and feel you would be unable or unwilling to perform the duties listed on the safety card, please ask a flight attendant to reseat you.
It's a lot of responsibility.
Want to switch seats?
No, I'm not sure I'm the man for that particular job.
An exit door procedure at 30,000 feet. The illusion of safety.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know why they put oxygen masks on planes?
So you can breathe.
Oxygen gets you high. In a catastrophic emergency, you're taking giant panic breaths. Suddenly you become euphoric, docile. You accept your fate. It's all right here. Emergency water landing 600 miles an hour. Blank faces, calm as Hindu cows.
That's an interesting theory.
Oh, it's not a theory anymore. And these advertisements for these drug companies are a perfect illustration as much. Look at the faces of the people in these advertisements, whether or not it's the actor that's portraying the patient, whether or not it's the people in and around that actor's life. If you ever see a frown, if you ever see a problem, it is only the beginning of the commercial. That problem will be solved. That frown will be turned upside down with a simple pill. It's not normalizing your life when you take the pill, that these problems aren't really problems when the pill exists for you to take. It's normalizing that the body is constantly sick and that this is the standard. The standard for your body is sickness. Your body is not trying to communicate with you by being sick. It's just sick. This is part of being alive, is being sick. That's bullshit, dear listener. That's bullshit. Your body's default condition is not sickness, it is health. Sickness is an indication that something's wrong, and it's wrong within your control. That's right, dear listener. It's wrong within your control. You're eating the wrong thing. You're drinking the wrong thing. You're eating too much of something. You're drinking too much of something. Maybe it's not enough sleep. Maybe it's too much sleep. Maybe you need to start exercising. Maybe you need to change around your exercise regimen. Maybe you need to change the amount of energy you give to the thoughts in your head. Maybe you need to change the thoughts in your head. I was awestruck by the number of drug ads, particularly on sporting events. Again, that's what I watch, so that's where I saw them. And the number of drug ads that are run over and over again, depending on the time slot of that event. If you're paying attention, you can very quickly mark what kind of program you're watching and what time it's on television by the number of drug ads that you're seeing for different types of drugs. You aren't going to see the same drugs advertised in prime time between the hours of 5 and 8 p.m. as you're going to see being advertised at 11:30 a.m. in the middle of the day. Regardless, the commercials, the advertisements are all the same. This is normal, that you're sick, and it's no more of a problem than simply taking this pill once a day. We are being conditioned, dear listener. We are being conditioned to accept sickness as part of being alive. Sickness is not the standard. Sickness is not the default. And as much as you may be in agreement with me, sitting here listening to this, what we need to be watchful of is how that normalization affects us. We aren't some kind of unique breed of human being because we had the good fortune of being born in the United States of America. We are just as susceptible, if not more susceptible, because we don't see it coming, because we think ourselves higher and more sophisticated, more alert, more adept than the average person on planet Earth in the 21st century. We don't see how we're being conditioned in this country. We have the most expensive healthcare on planet Earth, and we are being conditioned to accept the fact that we are sick, that being sick is just a normal part of being alive, and that we have the best healthcare system on planet Earth to address this normal state of affairs. Occasionally I get in my ego, I want to fight the power. Hell, that's no more complicated in the 21st century than simply turning off or muting all of the drug ads that you see during any kind of broadcast that's on television today. This is Why Don't Vote, a podcast.